Nicolette Santino is a puppeteer who's worked with the Muppets, the Jim Henson Company, and on the shows The Barbarian and the Troll and Earth to Ned. She also has the gig of a lifetime, puppeteering Angel Moon on stage with Coldplay as they tour the world. I sat down with Nicolette Santino to discuss her career in puppetry, improvisation, and much, much more on this episode of Under the Puppet.
You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show.
Welcome to the show that is preserving puppetry through the personal stories of professional puppeteers. My name is Grant Pachoco, and this is Under the Puppet. Nicolette Santino, welcome back to Under the Puppet.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to talk to you because you were on the show before talking about The Barbarian and the Troll, which we will touch on during this interview. But I'm super excited to find out more about your just puppetry journey. And I would love to know, as I always do, start off by asking, do you remember your first exposure to puppetry, the first time you saw puppets?
The first time I saw puppets, it must have been Sesame Street. I grew up in the 90s, so there was so much in the 90s. Puzzle Place was a big thing. But my first experience using a puppet, I had this leopard puppet, and it was beautiful, and it was large, and you put your hand in its stomach, and you can move its mouth. And I used to stick it out the window of my mom's car in the back seat, and I used to sing NSYNC songs or just roar at strangers and make them laugh and make them smile. And I think that was the first time I was like, I could affect people without being myself, because I was kind of a shy kid. Mm-hmm. I still am shy, but it was kind of like, I could make people smile and not have them look at me, Yeah. Yeah, that was my first experience.
Excellent. And I always like to ask, was your family creative? Did you come from a creative background?
I feel like my parents were creative in very different ways than I am. They're not performers at all. My dad was a editor for CBS Studios. So I feel like that involves creativity, although I don't really know what his job entailed too much, but I think it did. And my mom is a barber for CBS Studios for all the people who worked in the building. So I think that involves creativity in a way.
Right, yeah.
But as for performing, I'm the only one I know in my family who's a performer.
Did you, from that young age, you talked about making people laugh with the puppet, and finding out that your parents worked at CBS, did you kind of have this idea of I want to perform, I want to be in entertainment somehow?
I wanted to be a theater teacher all throughout my life, and I was stuck on that for so long. I wanted to be a theater professor for a college. Yeah, I wanted to also act and stuff, but the end goal was to be a teacher. I think I remember having an experience when I was in middle school, and I taught someone how to play Heart and Soul on the piano, which is still the only thing I know how to play. But I remember feeling, I love that the person I was teaching got it, and she was really excited to understand it and get it, and I want to be a part of this.
Right.
So I just studied theater in order to be a teacher.
And so when you went to high school and stuff, were you in the plays? And
I did improv my whole life. I started improv, and that's how I got into puppetry, is through improv. I started improv when I was in middle school. So there was a girl in my elementary school class, I think it was 5th or 6th grade, and she was doing acting classes in town. And I was like, that's exciting. My mom and I were obsessed with Whose Line Is It Anyway? Mm-hmm. And so we would always watch it religiously. And then when my friend told me, hey, I know how to do that, I'm learning how to do it at this school. I'm like, what? So she's like, well, there's a bring a friend to class day. So she brought me as a friend, and I started doing improv classes through that school. But they were so expensive. My family couldn't afford these classes.
yeah.
And so when the teacher was like, okay, so are you going to sign up for classes? I was like, we can't afford it. And she's like, just keep coming. So I ended up stealing 4 years of really good classes until I was like, okay, I think this is wrong. But, the authority figure, my adult authority figure was telling me to do it.
Yeah.
So that was fun. That's how I got into improv. And then that's how I eventually got into puppetry.
And were you doing like improv shows? Like, did you form a, join up with a troupe or?
Yeah. So once I got into high school, I auditioned for the improv team there and I made it. And I was an improviser all throughout high school. I was in theater, but mainly improvising.
Mhm.
And that was really, really fun and exciting. And then after I graduated, during school, I started an improv team with a couple of boys. And it was called the Horse and Saddle Jubilation Good Times Improv Brigade. And we would just perform at a nearby church that one of the guys was a part of. And then I started my own improv team called Beasts of the Street with a few friends of mine.
Mhm.
And then, we would perform in Hollywood and Santa Clarita.
Let me ask you this, as somebody who's done a lot of improv, and we'll get to getting into puppetry, but you're a fellow cast member in Puppet Up, and you've done a lot of puppet improv. How do you think having this training in improv helped your puppetry?
Well, I think it's important to be a good actor as a puppeteer. And I really think that improv helps with being a good actor because you can think on the fly, you can be in the moment, you could adjust to maybe what your partner is doing, you could add something that's not in the script and elevate it. I mean, there's so many things that you can do with improv, but it also, I feel like having such a strong background in improv made me a more confident person in general, which affected my performance because I have confidence in myself. And it also affects me in many different ways. Like when I'm having a conversation with someone, I feel more comfortable because I can go with the flow a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you studied at the Groundlings too, right?
I did, yeah. I started when I graduated high school. I begged my mom for my birthday present to put me on Groundlings classes, and she saved up and she did it. And she put me in Groundlings classes, and then I was hooked. I loved it. Yeah.
And was at any point during this time, were there any puppets involved, or was it strictly just doing improv?
It was strictly just doing improv. I never imagined in my wildest dreams that I would be a puppeteer.
And so how did that transition happen? How did you get your chance to do puppets?
When I was in college, I was majoring in theater to be a teacher, and Alan Troutman was my improv teacher. And I took his classes, and I was very much the person in college where I was like, I'm just going to take classes that I enjoy and that I don't necessarily need for my degree, because I took his class multiple times. And it was just really fun. And years later, after I stopped taking classes with him, he contacted me and said, hey, the Jim Henson Company is looking for more female improvisers to maybe be a part of this improv team, but it's just a workshop for now. And I was like, yes, oh my gosh, of course. I'll be there.
Yeah.
And that's how I started.
And what was it like, because you'd played around with puppets before that, but putting on the puppet for the first time and learning the sort of Henson style of puppetry?
It was hard. It was very hard. Yeah, the flip of the monitor in your mind was difficult. And then, of course, during these classes, I think I took these classes for 4 years before I did Puppet Up. I broke my arm. I broke my hand. I broke my wrist. Okay, that sounds like I had many injuries. I'm just fixing myself. I broke my wrist when I was snowboarding. And I came in with a cast one day, and I was like, I guess I'm going to learn how to do this left-handed. And I started to learn left-handed because I was so desperate to learn. I was just I was having so much fun learning how to improvise with puppets and all the techniques to use with puppetry that I was like, nothing's going to stop me.
And being in those workshops, being around the other puppeteers, some of whom probably worked on things that you watched, you talk about Puzzle Place, and I know a couple people worked on the Puzzle Place that we've interviewed here that have been involved in Puppet Up. What did you learn from working with the other puppeteers that helped your puppetry in that moment?
Well, I remember within the class where I started, it was pretty much all new people. But watching Alan Troutman do it, I was amazed with how specific his puppetry is and how he could pretty much do anything with this puppet and make it look really real and really entertaining. And I was just really impressed that he was able to puppeteer so well and do improv at the same time, because that's what I struggled with at the beginning, is doing both well at the same time. I felt like I could only improvise well if my puppetry suffered, or I could only puppeteer better if my improv suffered. So it was quite a journey to get good at both things at the same time. And yeah, it was just really impressive seeing Alan Troutman do it.
And did this like open up a whole new world of puppetry? Because like, you said before, like I never thought I could, you wanted to be a puppeteer, but like was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I started to learn and I had my first job and I was like, okay, I want to pursue this 100%. I want 100% of my energy in this.
Right.
And that's what I did.
And what was that first job? What was your first gig that you got?
Jess McKay actually gave me my first job. He recommended me for a job he had for tailor-made golf clubs. And they were animatronic puppets, but marionettes. And so some person would be controlling the marionette aspect. And then I had a RC controller where I would control the facial expressions in the mouth. And I just had to lip sync to a pre-recorded track of someone speaking. And that's what I did. And Jess was like, okay, if anyone asks, just say you've done this before. And I was like, okay. No one asked. Right. Everyone just assumed.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really fun.
That's crazy to go from like sort of Henson style puppets to all of a sudden, here's this animatronic marionette that you're working on. So.
Yeah.
But I mean, the principles are all still the same. But.
Yeah. And it was my first time really being on set. And I remember trying to look at the monitor as the director was trying to look at the playback monitor. And I was like in the way, and I was learning how to be on set and how, okay, you got to stand back when the director is trying to watch playback. Don't get in his way. I didn't know. I mean, I was so green. I was so new at this.
Yeah. Well, we all are. We all get that, that moment. You were also the lead puppeteer for Funny or Die, right?
Yeah. That was another thing Jess McKay brought me on. He brought me on as a caller, I think is what they're called when they do a hoedown.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did a Funny or Die video and I was the caller. I was the person. And again, that was another lip syncing one. And that was really challenging because, those callers speak so fast and that's part of the joke. So I had to be perfect.
Right. Well, and I know I'm kind of jumping around here. You also worked on Crank Yankers, right?
I did.
Which is another sort of lip syncy thing. So what is your go-to method for learning a track? Because sometimes as puppeteers, we do have to learn a track. What is your go-to method to nail that?
Let's just listen to it over and over religiously and then make sure that there's beeps between each part where you're speaking so you know when it's going to start. On Crank Yankers, I was an assist, so I didn't do any lip syncing on that one. So I just did hands and feet and whatever else was needed, or background puppets.
Yeah.
Lip syncing is something I'm very familiar with.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I know you and I worked on a commercial together for Progressive Insurance, I guess, or whatever. And that was a thing where we were lip syncing and we didn't even hear till the moment they were playing it.
Yep.
Yeah, which is a crazy way to do things. So
yeah,
but you just do your best, I guess.
I mean, what can you do?
Yeah. So after that, you were training for Puppet Up. When did you do your first Puppet Up show?
I think that was 2016. Yeah, 2016, I believe. That was my first Puppet Up show. And I remember getting a call from Patrick Bristow inviting me to do my first Puppet Up show. And this is something I didn't think that I would be asked to do. I thought I was just taking classes for fun. And if I get in a show, awesome. But that's not my expectation. And I got in a show and I was thrilled. I remember being at the top of my stairs and being very calm on the phone with Patrick Bristow. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you very much. And then I click and I screamed and I jumped up and down and I started dancing. I was thrilled.
Don't fall down the stairs.
I almost did.
And break your wrist again.
Oh, God.
So what was your first Puppet Up show like? Do you have memories of doing those, or those, even the first show or your early shows? Yeah.
Yeah, I was so nervous. But for some reason, and I remember not sleeping the night before at all. I mean, maybe a few minutes. I was so excited. And so I was really nervous, and I was also very scared that my lack of sleep was going to affect my performance and my improv. And for some reason, the adrenaline before the show and everything worked out. And I was picking on things that team members dropped, and I was kind of like helping out and doing better than I expected I would, to be fair. And then it snowballed from there.
Yeah, well, I always, when I get to be in a show with you, it's always a lot of fun. I know, you just know, like, people you can count on, right? Like, in a scene, like, you don't have to be nervous. Puppet Up's pretty solid. There's not really anybody you have to be nervous about. But I always know that if I'm in a scene with Nicolette, it's going to be fine. It's going to be good.
Oh, I feel the same.
Thank you. That's why I said that. So you would know. That's not why I said that. One of the things, you've done a lot of shows, and we've shows on the lot and shows at Knott's and all these shows. And one of the things that you got to do, which I think is very fun, is develop a musical improv, because there's a lot of music in the show. And can you talk about sort of, because you're sort of a Billie Eilish style song improv. Can you talk about how that developed? Was that your idea? Did Patrick give you that idea, and how that song come up? Because it's a really fun piece.
Oh, I love it. Patrick actually approached me about it, and he said, "Hey, I think your voice is similar to Billie Eilish's, and so I would like to do something with that, and maybe we can develop a song improv structure for you." And I was like, I haven't really been very experienced with song improv. So at first I was like, "Are you sure?" Are you sure? Yeah, okay. But I'm always one to take advantage of new things and try new things. It's something that I'm very passionate about, not shying away from things that seem difficult and not shying away from things that are different. So I was like, okay, we'll do this. And I started to take classes, and I started to learn, and Drew Massey helped me out a lot with the song itself, building the song, and then Willie Etra. I met with him, and we plunked out, a similar type of, is it rhythm? No, not rhythm. Melody. Melody. Yeah. And we kind of based it off of that, and then I went with Drew Massey, and he helped me kind of finish the song. He did the video that happens in the background. And then I just started practicing, and I would ask Drew to write down all these different suggestions, and he would put it in a cup, and I would just and do my best with that.
The song, for folks who haven't seen it, the song is like you're sort of singing about a guy in the audience, and about suggestions that you get from the guy in the audience. Was that always the idea? Like, you were going to sing about what the ideal date is for this guy? Was that always kind of the concept? Was going to be about a date?
That was my contribution. I chose that one because I thought it would be really, really fun to sing to a specific person, and my mind could easily wrap my head around the silliness of a date and the silliness of the different things that he could possibly say. I don't know. Just make a normal date seem weird is what my intention was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot of fun. And the other fun concept, I'd love to know if this was just something from the start or whatever, but I don't know if this is the official name, but we call it Billy Eyefish because you use a fish character, and one of our fish is sort of modified to sort of be the Billy Eyefish character. Was it always going to be fish, or were you thinking of other puppets to do this? Or
I think that was Patrick's idea. Billy Eyefish,
right?
Is to do a play on that name.
Yeah. Well, it's fun, and then we all get to be fish behind you and swim along. And I love also Drew is very good. Drew Massey is very good at bringing in sort of video effects. And so there's a whole segment of the film where there's like, there's the background video, but there's also the weird part where he comes in and plays like kind of the guy in the audience. And it's just a lot of fun. Yeah. So were those pieces like all just suggestions from different people, and they came together to make this piece?
I think that was my idea. I wanted Drew to come in as the person, as the guest audience, and kind of not mock the audience member, but in a way,
just poke
a little, poke gently.
Yeah, well, it's because it's something that hasn't been done in the show before. In all the times I've seen it from the beginning, they've brought people up on stage to be with the puppets, but to actually, I guess in the date scene we kind of represent people, but in a song is what I'm saying is we've never represented the person, so it's very cool. Do you have other fun moments or pieces or things you like to do in Puppet Up?
In Puppet Up. Recently I've become obsessed with the HDPS. Obsessed. I go there and I practice. When I'm not on tour, I go there and practice over and over and over and over again and just lip sync to songs. And so what I like to do in Puppet Up with that is the interrupted bedtime story.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing to do in Puppet Up now. I've only done it once, but it's my favorite.
Yeah. That is it's a super fun piece. And recently we've been doing town hall with it too. And I think you would be great in the town hall stuff too. So
Cool, thanks.
We will talk about your tour here in a second. But I wanted to also talk about I'm assuming it's through Puppet Up and through this relationship of training there, you started working on productions. And we worked on Happy Time Murders together. So can you talk about your experience working on Happy Time Murders?
I was so thrilled to be a part of Happy Time Murders. I was in college at the time, and I had, like 3 or 4 part-time jobs. And as soon as I got the contract and I signed it, I quit everything. I mean, I eventually went back to college and got my degree. But yeah, I was like, this always, this only. Yeah, that was really exciting to be on set and learn. And it was such a huge learning experience for me. It's very valuable. I mean, I got paid to train, is how I feel. It was.
And you were on for the whole thing, right?
I originally was on for the whole thing, but then they had budget issues, and so I got cut. And so what happened was I went from being one of the main cast members to then being a daily. I had quit all of my jobs. I had quit school. So I was like, I have time. So I asked Kevin Clash, I was like, hey, Kevin, I recently got cut. Would I be able to just come on set and watch and learn on days that I'm not asked to puppeteer? And he was like, absolutely. And so that's what I did. The reason I was there often is because I was just there on my free time, learning.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite pieces from Happy Time Murders, like where you see it on the screen and you're like, oh yeah, I love that part?
Well, I'm in it, like physically as a human being, which is really exciting. Yeah. I mean, it's such a little extra part, but at the very end of the movie, you can see me holding hands with a puppet that Drew Massey is puppeteering, and I'm walking across the street and smiling, and I'm like, hey, look at me, I made it, Mom.
Yeah.
I'm in a movie.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, I always love, I think we all wish that movie would have done bigger and better things. But whenever it's on, if you're just flipping channels and it's on Showtime or wherever it's on, it's always like, this was a fun experience to work on this.
It really was.
Yeah.
It was magical too, because it was shot in Santa Clarita, which is where I lived.
Right.
And so for the first time in my life, I was like, oh, I could just roll out of bed and get to set really quickly.
Yeah. I also remember, and I'm sure you were there that day, there was just that day where they brought in every puppeteer in LA. It was just this one, and it was just a great day to be like, oh my gosh, everybody is here. Everybody you either know or don't know or whatever, but you can get to know them. It was a lot of fun.
It was a great group of people. And I always say this, that puppet people are good people. It attracts the type of people that I like to have in my life.
Yeah.
And so I'm always thrilled when I get any sort of puppet job, because I get to be around my friends.
Yeah. I always think puppet people also, most of them have not lost that sense of play, and they'll always, you know what I mean? I guess you kind of have to be almost childlike to play with these puppets, but you don't ever get people like, shh, quiet, I'm learning my lines. I need to be alone.
Yeah.
People goof around. It's kind of fun. Well, another big project that you worked on was Earth to Ned, and you were Cornelius's assistant. I mean, you did other things as well, but that was your main thing. Can you talk about how you got cast on that and getting to work on that production?
Yeah, I was so thankful because I didn't have to audition. I was just asked to be the assist for Michael Ostrom, and I was thrilled, and so I started, and it was such a great learning experience. I mean, every job is such a great learning experience because no job is the same as any other. But that was just like, wow, perfect masterclass in how to assist and how to do what you need to do. Because I also had Kevin Clash there right next to me, and he coached me a few times, and I was like, all right, this is who I want to be learning from.
Yeah.
One of the many people I want to learn from. But yeah, I learned so much on that. And working with Michael Ostrom was wonderful. He's a great puppeteer. He's so funny and so talented. And I loved improvising with him as his hand. Yeah, a lot of that was improv. And it was just really fun to not really know what the day would hold.
Yeah. What did you have any sort of, because working on one character for the whole run of the show, I'm sure you develop little things like, oh, Cornelius has this one little thing he does with his hands, or like, was there anything like that where like, I don't know, touches his nose, like whatever it is, you know what I mean? Did you?
I would, yeah, I would just make sure to match whatever Michael Ostrom was doing with the other hand. And so what I found him doing was a lot of fiddling and and like touching his other hand and kind of ringing because he maybe was saying something that made him nervous.
Right.
And so he had little movements here and there.
Well, and the other great thing about Cornelius is, unlike really the rest of the characters, was that you went out places. So what was that like, going out to leaving the studio and filming these different things?
It was really neat. It was really neat to talk to people that we were working with. And I think, one of the places that we went was a boxing ring. And that was really fun. I mean, I would catch myself going, look at me at a boxing ring and working and puppeteering. What is my life? So that was really cool to be in different atmospheres. Yeah.
And you did some of the Claudes too, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, those were fun, unique puppets to work on, yeah.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about this on Barbarian and the Troll podcast that we did. It was your assisting on Cornelius that kind of got you into Barbarian and the Troll, right?
It's true. I think Michael Ostrom was being very kind, and he was talking to Colleen and kind of saying, wow, Nicolette's really good at being an assist. And so that is why Colleen asked me to be her assist on Barbarian and the Troll.
And so that was going up to Canada. Was that the first time you left LA to go work on something?
It was, yeah. And that was during the pandemic too. So that was quite a wild ride of just going into Canada and then quarantining in a hotel room for 2 weeks and then starting on set. I mean, it was just otherworldly.
I guess it was being in a hotel that long is a little bit of a precursor to your tour life now. Let's talk a little bit about Barbarian and the Troll. It was such like a great team. And with the pandemic making you, I would assume, even closer, because it's like, this is the team. There's no big day where we bring in all the other puppeteers because it's this. So can you talk about that experience? And also, I know that a lot of the puppeteers did many different roles on the show as well. So,
it's true, yeah.
Yeah.
I felt that working on Barbarian and the Troll made us so much closer than we were before. I thought, it's because what we would do is not only would we work all week with each other, but we would also, because it was the pandemic, we would hang out because we had our pandemic bubble.
Right.
And so on our off days, we would just have a little weekend party, or I think it was Fridays, all the ladies would get together in one of our rooms and hang out and, drink wine and chit chat. And so I really felt at the end of the project, I had my own little puppet family, and we're still also close till this day. I mean, we're celebrating Christmas together multiple times, like so many parties that we're celebrating this month.
Yeah. Did you, same question as Happy Time Murders, did you have a moment on Barbarian and the Troll where when you see it, you're like, oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy for that shot?
Well, I remember there was this one time. Well, okay, there's actually a couple. I remember there was a time where we needed to fill out a whole population of gnomes. And so what we did was, and we only had, I think it was 7 of us. I don't know, maybe I'm miscounting, but it was just a handful of us. And we had to make it look like there was a whole village of gnomes and the camera would pan across these different areas. And it was just one shot. And what we would do is we would grab our gnomes, go through the camera shot, and then when we're out of shot, drop our gnomes, grab different gnomes, come in the other side, be gnomes in that shot, drop those gnomes, grab different gnomes, and be new gnomes in a different shot. And oftentimes we were working with both of our hands with puppets on them. And so that was my favorite shot in the whole series, because you, looking at it now, you would never know that we only just had a handful of people working.
Yeah.
It looked like a little village. It was really cool.
Did you rehearse that a bunch of times?
We did.
Yeah.
We did. But I think we only shot it like 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
Those crazy scenes are always like the best. Those are always fun.
I know. I wish we got a video of that, of the behind the scenes.
Oh, behind the scenes. Yeah.
There was another moment where I think Colleen was puppeteering Brendar and I was her hand, and she had a sword in her hand, and something zaps her hand. and she drops the sword, and I was able to catch it with my left hand, and I felt so cool when I was doing that. Yeah.
Again, another thing you needed behind the scenes footage to catch with.
I got compliments from the crew on that one, and I was like, yeah, look at me.
I also want to touch on, you are a member of GLOP, the Glorious Ladies of Puppetry. So can you talk about getting involved in that? Because that was something else that started kind of during the pandemic, right?
Yeah. Colleen reached out to me, and she was like, hey, do you want to do this thing? It's all lady and non-binary and trans puppeteers, and we're just going to do some skits and just make them. And what would happen is it was during the pandemic, so we didn't really interact with one another, but they would set up a shot, like they would tell us how to set up a shot, and then we would do our lines with no other puppeteers around, and then Rich Prince would put it all together and edit it, make it look like we were talking to other puppets that weren't in the room. It was really cool. It was a great idea that Colleen had, and Donna and Alice. They pulled it off. I don't know how they did, but it looked like we were all in a room together. It was really neat.
Yeah. And then you were in the second season as well, right? And you also did you do the live shows? You did the live shows.
I did. Yeah, I did one.
So what was that bringing this idea of these kind of web series videos like to the stage?
Oh, it was really cool. I mean, my comfort place is improv with puppets now. So I was really excited to do that again. Working with all of the GLOP ladies, I mean, especially Colleen and Sarah O, they're such great improvisers. So it was a lot of fun to work with them.
Yeah. You also puppeteer for a web series called Whoopi and Fati. Can you talk about how that job came about?
So Whoopi and Fati was created by Jason Flackman and Lauren Pomerantz, and they wanted to create a show that not only teaches children about, you know, the 1, 2, 3s, their ABCs, and lots of fun, like Wheels on the Bus songs.
Right.
But they really wanted to focus on emotional intelligence with children and focusing on anxiety. They really want to allow parents and children to understand how to deal with these emotions of anxiety and what to do and to name them and say, it's okay that you have these feelings. This is how you deal with it. And so we do that through different songs and different skits that we do. And I work with Christian Anderson. He plays Fati, and he is absolutely wonderful to work with. He's such a delight. And he is definitely one of those people who just arrives on set just ready and happy to be there. And his energy affects my energy, and we like to play together. He's really great to work off of.
And it's Whoopi is it's like a blanket, right?
Yeah.
And then what is Fati? I'm sorry, I remember seeing it, but are they both blankets?
They're both blankets.
Both blankets. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a great concept because kids love their blankets.
They do. It's a sense of comfort, and I think that's what Lauren and Jason really wanted to put together. Yeah. So Fati is the older blanket, and I'm Whoopi, the younger blanket, and Fati kind of teaches Whoopi about the ways of life.
And that's on YouTube Kids, right?
That's on YouTube Kids. If you search Whoopi and Fati,
I'll put a link to it in the show notes so people can find it.
Great, thank you.
You did many shows at Knott's Berry Farm with Puppet Up, but you also got to work at Disneyland on the Muppet Caroling Coach. Can you tell us about that project and how that came to be?
That was absolutely magical. Bill Beretta asked me if I would like to be a part of that project, and I was just thrilled to do it. And what I did was I was Gonzo at the top, and I was just so awestruck because I was holding one of the real Gonzos on my hand and puppeteering him, and I just couldn't get over that. And it was really, really cool seeing the reaction of the audience members to seeing the Muppets up close like that. I mean, I think we did a rehearsal one night before the actual show, and one of the cast members came up to us, and she was like, I just started crying when I saw the Muppets, and it just brought back such great memories. And it was really cool to play a very, very tiny part of that, just for a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many, for those that don't know, it was the double-decker bus at Disneyland, right? And then the Muppets were up on the top?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
There was double-decker, so it was Kermit and Piggy at the bottom, and then the rest on top.
Right. So how many times a night did you do that? How many, was it?
Oh, gosh. I don't know if I remember.
Was it like constant, or like you would have breaks and then you would
we would have breaks.
Time for this show. Yeah.
We would have breaks in between. And it was really, really cool because after we were done, we were able to go into the park and enjoy the park. for free.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting.
Yeah, what's it like? I mean, putting on one of these Muppets.
Absolutely magical. I mean, it was just, I mean, the first time I worked with the Muppets, I was starstruck about the Muppets being around. And then to actually put one on,
Yeah.
I was,
And you said you were Gonzo. Did you look at a lot of Gonzo stuff to like get the movements down?
I did. Yeah. And I studied different videos I found on YouTube of Gonzo and I tried to get his movements. But, I can only do so much. I mean, Dave Goles, he's a master.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I did what I could. And it was so incredibly, I'm just so thankful for that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you would work with the Muppets again on Muppets Mayhem more recently. So can you talk about your experience there and what that was like?
I worked with the Muppets for the Haunted Mansion show.
Oh, that's right.
And
Haunted
then
Mansion, yeah.
also, which I did more work on that one because when Mayhem came around, that's when I started up tour.
Okay.
So I only did a few days here and there.
Okay.
Yeah, that was incredible. I mean, like I said, it's so magical working with the Muppets. And it's such a great atmosphere. Everyone was so happy and so thankful to be there and in a good mood. And yeah, it was really cool working with the masters.
Yeah. And Dave wasn't mad at what you did with Gonzo on
No.
that? No, okay.
I don't know if he even saw, to be honest.
Well, what do you say work with the masters? Like what's one sort of technique or trick that you learned working with these, master puppeteers that you use to this day?
Oh, well, I think I look at Bill Beretta, and he is such a wonderful puppeteer and a wonderful actor. And I took some classes with him for the Muppets workshop, and he really drilled into us that it's very important for us to be good actors as well as good puppeteers. And I think that's what I took the most out of watching him and working with him and being taught by him in the workshops is that, yeah, you are an actor as a puppeteer. And I think, people who aren't puppeteers forget that maybe.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's really important to hone your craft in all different ways. And because you're still trying to connect with the audience, you're still trying to empathize with human experience, even with a puppet, whether it's an animate object or an animal or a human, whatever it may be, it still has a human experience in most parts. And I think in order to connect with the audience, you have to hone your craft as being an actor and really know what you're doing. Yeah.
Do you still take classes like outside of, Henson and all that kind of stuff?
I would love to, but the tour.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, goodness, I'm back like 2 weeks and then I'm off again.
Yeah.
But once the tour ends, that's what I plan to do. Immediately get into acting classes and go back to improv classes because I think it's always good to stay fresh.
Yeah. Well, we've mentioned this tour a million times throughout the thing. So let's talk about you are Angel Moon with Coldplay, and you have traveled the world literally. Can you talk about how you got hooked up in this experience and became Angel Moon?
So it was just as simple as my agent, Trish Ryan, reaching out and saying, hey, do you want to send in your reel for this project? And it was just, I think it was probably very vague and being on the road with a band for a year. And I was like, sure. Because it's another one of those things is don't shy away from something that's strange and unusual and different. So I was like, yeah, sure. Let me send my reel. And then, months went by and then I found out I got it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to travel. And then I found out it was Coldplay and I was like, I'm going to travel the world with Coldplay. And at that time, I thought it was just going to be a year-long gig, and it ended up being more than that, which I'm very thankful for.
Yeah, still going.
Yeah.
So can you kind of set up, maybe for somebody who hasn't seen the Coldplay show, like what this moment in the show is? And
yeah. So there's two moments. And one moment is Angel Moon singing during Human Heart, the song. And for a while, it was just Angel Moon. And Chris would come down from A stage, down along the catwalk, I don't know what it's called, to B stage, which is a circle in the middle of the audience. And he would sing with Angel Moon, and we would do a duet together. And it was actually very sweet and touching. And then now it changed. The show is always changing. And so now it's me and Donk, which is Drew Massey's puppet, doing a duet together. And then Chris Martin comes down the walkway and joins us at the very end. And then for a while, I was lip syncing to Beautiful, which is Angel Moon is featured in the music video. And so she would come on during Beautiful and sing Beautiful with Chris Martin on a stage, which was amazing. And then now it's changed to Good Feelings, where all the weirdos are together dancing and singing to Good Feelings. So it's ever evolving.
Yeah. And are you actually singing? Or are you lip syncing? Or
I'm lip syncing.
Lip syncing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. I would be a nervous wreck if I had to sing in front of that.
I know.
Many people. Not that you couldn't do it. I'm just saying I would be a nervous wreck. Yeah. So it must be this incredible experience because I can only imagine how many people every night on this tour you're singing in front of, and not to mention, you're in another country as well.
Yeah, it's so I Googled it last night in preparation for this interview, and I think all the tickets that have been sold since early 2022 so far, I think it's over 12 million.
Wow.
Yeah. 12 million. 10 to 12 million, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've been to 37 countries since 2022.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that too. Like, has any of this been, because I've had a little bit of touring the U.S., not anywhere on the scale that you're doing, but is it a bus tour? Like, are you on a bus, or are you flying places, or like, how is the travel?
Mostly flying places.
I think
when we did the North American tour, we were busing between state to state for a little bit. But aside from that little portion, everything has been flying. And it's really great too, because the tour itself is very eco-conscious. So they do a lot of work with making it less harmful for the planet to tour, like always using electric vehicles when they can. And I think they run the show off of cooking oil as part of it. And it's great too, because in the concert, there's a little portion where people can ride bikes and jump up and down on a dance floor, and all of that movement adds to the power that runs the show. It's really neat.
Yeah. When the Coldplay tour started, you were touring with some other Henson puppeteers. Like I know Russ Walco went out, and Tyler Bunch and Drew and everything. But now when you are touring, you're working with sort of local puppeteers. Can you talk about the experience of traveling to different places and meeting local puppeteers from all around the world, these 37 countries you've been to?
Right. So it was absolutely wonderful working with the Henson puppeteers because, again, all my friends,
right.
We adore each other and we love working with each other. And they're so talented. They're so knowledgeable of what they're doing. Tyler Bunch is amazing. Artie Esposito, Russ Walco, I mean, my goodness, Amanda Maddock, Drew Massey. So they only came out every once in a while during the first year because sometimes they would just be like, hey, we want the weirdos in these few shows. And then like in Argentina, they played in Argentina and then they would go home. And then I would just be alone, just Angel Moon in the show. But then the second year, they wanted to do local puppeteers because Coldplay is very, very generous with local artists. Oftentimes, Chris will find a local artist singing in a public area and then invite them to be on the show with him. So he's very, very generous. They all are about local artists. And so what they would do is they would bring local puppeteers in, and then I would work with them and train them in a very, very short amount of time for the show that day. I would have one rehearsal with them on stage, and I would work with them, showing them how to position their bodies and how to puppeteer specific characters, and I would, have them practice over and over and over again. And then I would come to their dressing room later on in the day and have like a mini rehearsal within the dressing room. And it was real. I would say that's my favorite part of this whole job, is working with puppeteers from all over the world. I mean, what an incredible gift that is to me, to be able to talk to all these different artists from all over the world and learn from them what puppetry is like in their culture. And a lot of them are marionettists. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, I have never done this type of puppet before. I'm like, great, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's go. And then sometimes we would have an off day and the local puppeteers would be so welcoming and kind to me that they would invite me out and we would have a day of adventuring. They would show me their country. They would show me their city and be really proud to do that. And so, yeah, I got to experience the world in a different way by making friends all over.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
Well, and it's kind of like what you set out to do is teaching theater. You're teaching
Yes.
these puppeteers.
Yes.
You're doing it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, I wanted to teach anything and I just happened to love theater. So that's what I wanted to teach. And now I'm teaching puppetry and it's incredible, Grant. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm so thankful. And everyone has been so kind to me and so willing and excited to absorb anything I say, which is really fun because they're just so grateful to be there. And as am I. And we're just, it's really fun watching them put on Henson puppets and then say to their friends, oh my gosh, can you believe we are putting and puppeteering Henson puppets on our hands? And I go, I have to think to myself like, yes, that's right. This is such a privilege that you and I get to do all the time. And for people all over the world, that's a rarity. Yeah.
Well, I did want to ask, I mean, if you listen to podcasts, you listen to comedians or you listen to rock and roll people like talking about, they always have like crazy tour stories of crazy things. Like, do you have any story that you can share with us of like, oh, the one night the lights went out? I don't know, whatever, like one crazy thing that happened.
Yeah, recently actually. It was it was Guy, the bassist of the band, was sick unexpectedly and he couldn't do the show. And I think that was the first time in all of Coldplay history that a band member couldn't do the show and the others could. Mm-hmm. And so what they did was they took Bill Rocco, he's one of the producers of the show, of the music, and they just put him in a jumpsuit. And then they put, in the show, the band wears alien heads for one song in the show, and they just put one of those alien heads on him, and he just held a bass and just kind of rocked out with Coldplay, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I feel sorry for Guy, but that was
Right.
pretty cool for Bill Rocco.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's always craziness that happens, and no matter what scale of the tour, it seems like
Yeah.
you could have a worldwide tour like yours, or a tiny little puppet tour traveling the East Coast. Can have crazy stories.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm sure in those moments too on stage, that's where your improv kicks in, right? You know you can handle anything. I wanted to, as we start to wrap up here, I wanted to ask about, if you want to talk about Strawberry the Gnome and
Sure.
about what people can look forward to maybe with Strawberry.
Yeah. Strawberry the Gnome is a gnome puppet that I bring on tour with me. And any off days or time I have in the city, I bring the gnome and I take her and I do little videos of her in front of different landmarks of the country, whatever's like most known in that country. Basically, the first year I didn't do this. And then Drew was like, you should bring a puppet and you should, do videos with a puppet. And I was like, oh, I already wasted a year. I didn't do it the first time. So why do it now?
Yeah.
Which is silly.
Yeah, no, do it.
Yes, I should. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And so I brought this puppet and I started doing all these videos. And I think eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a TikTok and I'm going to start an Instagram. And I think the handle is going to be Strawberry Nomad.
I like it.
Hey.
Yes. Yeah.
But I haven't put anything up yet.
Yeah. Well, if people follow you, you'll definitely, when that time comes out,
I'll announce it on Instagram.
Yeah, when I was fortunate enough to do 2 Mystery Science Theater tours, and I brought my little Uncle Interloper puppet, and he's small, he fits in a bag.
Yeah.
And it is a lot of fun because you kind of, I don't know, it can get a little boring. I mean, you're on this great, amazing tour, and so I'm not saying that the tour it's boring, but the downtime.
Right.
So to have something fun to work on
Yeah.
is really great.
And what I found is it got me outside. It got me
Yeah.
doing things. Because often I would be like, oh, goodness, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know what to do in this city. There's so much to do. Should I just, and I would often stay in my little room and sleep,
Yeah.
which is important. But it really got me out exploring the world. And I had an excuse to go out and see the Eiffel Tower. I had an excuse to go out and see the Sydney Opera House. And it really got me to experience the world in a different way.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to seeing Strawberry's adventures when they arrive. Do you prefer scripted or improv?
Improv.
Improv, yeah.
Yeah,
I had this question. I go, I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask.
Yeah, because you could do anything with improv, and you can really create it yourself. But I mean, scripted. I mean, hey,
yeah,
I'm not going to knock that.
Right. Yeah. If you hire me,
I will say the lines that you write.
Yes. And I also I like asking this question. I don't ask it often enough. What's something you always bring to set with you to help your puppetry job be
A good
easier?
attitude.
Oh, look at that. That's great. Yeah.
You have to arrive at work and just be grateful to be there. I mean, unless it's a horrible, horrible job. I mean, hey.
Right.
But most of the time, I mean, I've been so lucky. Every job I've had has been wonderful. And I just am so grateful to be there. And I think that really helps a lot with your work, is if you enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always like to wrap up by asking, what has been the highlight of your puppetry career so far?
Definitely Angel Moon.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the biggest thing I've ever done. It's the longest job I've ever had in puppetry. And it's an incredible experience, Grant.
Excellent. Well, Nicolette, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Again, a big thank you to Nicolette Santino for being on the show. For links to some of the things we discussed, check out the show notes for this episode number 103, over at underthepuppet.com. And if you'd like to hear even more of my talk with Nicolette Santino, it's available to the bonus content patrons over at patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. I would like to send out a special thank you to all the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who helped make this show possible. Patreon patrons at the producer level and above who get a special shout out are Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Tony Urbano, Brandy, David Akers, Paul, Scott Armstrong, Vicky Sebring, Ricky Chavez, Karina, Jeff Toro, and Lee Thompson. To become a patron, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. And thank you for your support. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. If you have questions, suggestions, or feedback about the show, send them via email to underthepuppet@gmail.com, or you can connect with the show on Instagram or Facebook by searching for Under the Puppet. And don't forget to tell a friend about the show. This episode featured music by Dan Ring and was incredibly expertly edited by Steven Staver. Thank you so much for listening. Under the Puppet is copyright 2025 Saturday Morning Media Grant Pachoco executive producer. All rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com.
Under the Puppet proudly presents the Adventures of Timmy the Tooth Reunion. In this almost 90-minute video, you will hear great stories from the cast and crew who brought this amazing puppet show to life. Plus, you'll see never-before-seen artwork and exclusive behind-the-scenes video. Under the Puppet's Timmy the Tooth Reunion is available right now at timmy.underthepuppet.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.